Ready or Not is widely believed to be the spiritual successor of SWAT 4. It is undeniable that both games have strong similarities, but there are still stark contrasts between the two. In this video, we will go over what Ready or Not could carry over from SWAT 4 to make it a game that feels alive, and not just a police shooter. While Ready or Not has achieved amazing gunplay, outside of the gunfights, the game still feels kinda empty, which is the opposite of the environmental storytelling in SWAT 4. When you're not shooting someone, there's always something that will catch your eye. SWAT members also feel like real individuals, with a backstory and personalities that interact with each other, rather than just be drones that run around with a gun.
Move over, JV. Hollywood's here.
Hands in the
Okay, so let's start by talking about the maps. Ready or Not has done a better job at telling stories with the environment than most shooters. However, it still lacks something fundamental where SWAT 4 strives: audio. Fairfax is the best example for that. The first time I loaded into this map, it sucked me in. And then you take that and compare it to 213 Homes, where you are in a problematic neighborhood, but in reality it just feels like everything is very empty outside.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
While the amazing map building makes Ron look stunning, the lack of sounds to accompany that makes it look like an empty husk that was slightly decorated. I don't want to discredit the Ron developers though. Obviously that empty husk is much better than the majority of games out there. It isn't just the outside of the maps that feel a little bit empty though. The inside could use a lot of work. For example, in Fairfax, you can hear the mother screaming in the radio, begging to get the daughter back. You could definitely add something like that in Amos's house, instead of whatever the fuck that is. Another thing that took me by surprise when playing SWAT 4 was the fact that objectives weren't straightforward. During the dealership raid, you suddenly get told that you also have to raid the building right next to you, which just mixes in objectives that you didn't have before. It keeps you on edge and it's pretty cool. You never really know what's gonna happen next. Is there something else that I didn't know about before? Talking about the objectives though, sometimes you do have the generic bring order to chaos objectives that you have in Ready or Not every time. But it felt like it mattered more because you know the names of the people. In Ron, you know Brixley, Amos and Modasir. These are all the names we got, that's why we know them. I get slightly frustrated that the Ron developers put in details that would absolutely add life to the characters you interact with, but you can only see them with a free look mod. For example, this is Derek. He has tried to get in recovery but failed. Jane has been receiving eviction notices for months and most likely is being used by the Los Locos to rent this house to run the operations. In return, she probably gets drugs from that. It all of a sudden makes me a little bit more inclined to not shoot the people involved here, unless they're obviously from the gang. It also annoys me that in a gas station you have people with name tags, and they intentionally scrub them. I want to know who these people are. I want them to matter in some way. I don't understand why you're taking that away from me. Anyway, my main point here is that there's a clear lack of audio cues. And instead of being guided through the story told in the maps by the developers like in SWAT 4, I'm having to hunt down the cues in Ready or Not. People also matter a lot more in SWAT 4 compared to Ron. But you know what also matters? Clicking that like button.
Hey, you! Alright folks, we're pressed on time here.
We just went over the environment, but a tech shooter also needs people to shoot at or shoot with. The SWAT in Ready or Not is soon receiving an overhaul, and you can't imagine how much I needed. I already pointed out the issues with the AI in the game in other videos, and Whiskey has also done a deep analysis into what he, as a SWAT officer himself, feels is wrong.
Oh, you brought me a nice cake for my birthday. That's so thoughtful. Or is it poisonous? Because you want me to die!
In short, a lot of times you will find SWAT sniffing on fresh paint in Ready or Not. You also get ambushed fairly often because there's no one covering your back. You will have 4 people looking at the same door in a hallway with 3 other doors completely unprotected. As a contrast, when breaching in SWAT 4, you will often find that one of the SWAT members will cover the back if they are needed. You honestly don't need that many people to look at a small hallway. There's also a huge issue with suspects not wanting to surrender in Ready or Not. Currently, suspects don't surrender from shouts alone. Every time you try to get someone to surrender without throwing a grenade, for example, they might hesitate a little bit, walk around, but ultimately they will always shoot at you. Whereas in SWAT 4, suspects have some sense of life preservation and decided $350 from the cashier isn't worth dying for. What is worth though is clicking the like button.
One time is funny, 2 times is fucking annoying, no?
One of the things that stuck out to me a lot was the amount of customization I could do with my missions. There's an amazing mission customization option in SWAT 4. I could choose the enemy's morale, what type of enemy I want to play against, who the hostages are, amounts of enemies, victory conditions, and so much more. If I want to hunt down a single Navy SEAL operator in labs, I can do that. You want to clear Fairfax's house with countless enemies inside? Sure, go ahead. It allows me to visit back maps with cool ideas, instead of being restricted by needless boundaries when I just want to go in and shoot a gun. On top of that, I believe that Ready or Not could copy a little bit of the career. Yeah, you don't need all the storytelling and all of that beforehand, the 911 calls, but you could definitely just create a playlist that people have to follow along and achieve certain scores before they can progress. They could also incentivize playing that and hunting for S ranks in every single map in the playlist by just giving little things like skins or guns, which is something they already talked about in the AMA. Having that playlist would give you purpose to really grind out the game without having to add much besides a list of maps you have to complete one after the other in a given order by the game. You could also unlock attachments slowly as maps get bigger, which could implement something similar to a campaign without much effort. With all of that said, Ready or Not is still an amazing game, and does a lot of things big studios aren't. If you want to know more about the game, feel free to click on one of the videos on your screen.